As Senior Vice President at Liberty Mutual, she leads efforts to integrate sustainability across the global enterprise and helps to develop the company's ESG strategy. She's a globally recognized stalwart in sustainability. She was recognized by the National Association of Corporate Directors, that's NACD, and has been identified as one of Boston's 100 most influential people of color by the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce, the Boston Foundation, and Get Connected. Well, it's time now to welcome Ms. Rakhi Kumar.
I want to thank Dun & Bradstreet for the invitation to speak to you today about a topic that's very dear to my heart. It's an honor to be here speaking to India's corporate elite, and it's some sort of personal homecoming for me as I'm returning to corporate India after 21 years in the US, much of it spent understanding the growing and evolving field of ESG. When I chose ESG as a career option, it was not a field. Even the term ESG had not been coined. Even today, ESG, which in literal terms means environmental, social, and governance, is a catch-all term with no real operational definition. And that term is often used interchangeably with sustainability or responsible business. And there's a misconception or perception that ESG is a corporate social responsibility, which it is not. CSR, or corporate social responsibility, has its roots in corporate philanthropy. And while CSR can be a subcomponent of an ESG program, that piece that aligns with a company's corporate values and social contributions, it cannot be a substitute. ESG is financially relevant to a company's business and strategy. The fact that we don't have a common definition of ESG impacts our understanding and our ability to conceptualize how these issues impact our business. It makes it harder for companies to implement ESG programs and truly integrate financially material ESG factors into their business. And that's why Dun & Bradstreet has made laying the foundation for an ESG-ready corporate India as this year's theme or the theme of this year's India's Top 500 Companies event. It's certainly well-timed and highlights where we are in the ESG journey. And I call it a journey because while ESG is going mainstream, our understanding of how these issues impact our business is still developing. However, that pace of evolution is rapid, and in some ways, ESG is like technology. It's obsolete before you even had time to implement it. And that pace can be overwhelming. Consequently, I've seen some companies shy away from pursuing the topic. It's not because they don't think ESG is important. They just don't know where to start. So today I'm hoping that I can simplify ESG and share some practical, action-oriented frameworks that can help us get started. So what is ESG? I like to think of ESG as these low probability, high impact factors that pose a risk to our business. The probability that something will go wrong due to ESG is low, but when it does go wrong, it can have very high financial and reputational impacts on a company or for a company's business and profitability. So think of that company that made a short strategic decision to cut back on its expenditure on safety. In the short term, that led to reduced costs and increased profits. However, that short-term decision led to an oil spill that cost the company over $65 billion in damages over a 20-year period. And this is one of many examples where a lack of focus on financially material ESG factors has led to losses either through fines, increased expenses, or loss of customers and market share. So why are we not adequately prioritizing ESG as a risk to our business? My personal view is that our risk frameworks really focus only on that probability aspect or angle of risk. We choose to ignore the high economic impact that can occur if the risk manifests itself. And that's why we don't take the action that's needed to mitigate this risk. If we were to expand our risk frameworks to include both probability and risk, ESG's factors will start getting the attention it deserves. And given the blurred lines between ESG and CSR, it's important to identify the various ESG factors that are financially material to our businesses. Here again, there's no real consensus amongst regulators or investors, and there are several ESG reporting frameworks that exist. What investors are looking for is data or information that provides insights on how you are managing relevant ESG factors. Moreover, they want the data to be measurable, comparable, and consistently reported year after year. And that's why some of the world's investors are really promoting Sustainable Accounting Standard Boards, or SASB, SASB, SASB's reporting framework that identifies the 5 to 10 financially material ESG issues that can impact your business based on your industry. The SASB maps help guide companies on what to measure, manage, and report when it comes to ESG. So, for example, for pharmaceutical companies, SASB identifies product pricing and selling as material to their business. And when it comes to IT services, IT service companies, information on their energy management, data security, and privacy are considered relevant. And I recognize that many of you here already have a very good understanding of ESG, but that some of you may be grappling with how do you oversee it within your business. After all, ESG covers a broad range of topics, from human capital management and corporate culture to addressing climate change and improving board governance. I want to assure you that ESG is not different than any other business risk that you have been managing and mitigating in your careers. ESG factors pose risks, systemic risks, and/or can be specific to a company and its industry. Systemic risks are those that are not in your control. Consequently, you need to consider different scenarios and outcomes when you build your strategies. So think of interest rates. These are set by RBI and commercial banks. Companies build their financial strategies based on interest rate environment and by stress testing their balance sheets at different interest rates to inform their capital strategies. Well, climate change is no different. Changing weather patterns pose systemic risk to our businesses by impacting supply chains, changing customer preferences, and increasing physical risks to your assets and your employees. So companies need to undertake climate scenario assessments and consider the physical and transition risks to build informed business strategies. ESG factors can also be specific to an industry or a company. But the good news here is that these are under your control. These can be managed and mitigated and need good planning, measurement, and reporting. So it's similar to managing your expenses and setting sales targets. So for example, many companies are committed to enhancing gender diversity in the workplace in order to reduce groupthink and increase or improve have better outcomes. And they're building programs to attract, retain, and promote women within the workplace. They set goals and measure performance or progress against those goals. Now that we are ESG ready, I want to share 3 criteria that I believe are vital to the building of a successful ESG program. Number 1, strong leadership and governance. It's really all about the tone at the top. Without board and chairman or CEO involvement and oversight, even the best ESG programs will falter. After all, employees are really focused on what leadership is focused on. Number 2, we need to integrate ESG into strategy. Earlier, I explained how ESG can pose a risk to our business. However, ESG is not just a risk, it's also an opportunity. And it provides these opportunities to companies by identifying products or the need for product innovation to meet changing customer needs or new markets that can fuel strategic growth. A good ESG program is well integrated into a company's business strategy and is considered vital to its success. Number 3, if ESG is a priority, you need to fund it like a priority. I've seen many well-intentioned companies falter because they have tried to build ESG programs with just one person. And then they're disappointed when their ESG efforts are not considered adequate from a market perspective. You need to be prepared to resource your ESG initiatives correctly. And I know when we talk about investments, the question asked is, what is the return on investments? Well, when it comes to ESG, the right question to ask is how long will we be in business if we do not invest in ESG? In closing, I really want to highlight how important it is for corporate India to get it right, both as a business community and as a nation. Our growing GDP fuels global growth. We're the top 7 economies in the world. However, in a 2018 report, the World Bank estimated that changing weather patterns, if left unchecked, could shave off over $1 trillion from India's GDP. Moreover, the race to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2050 is impossible to achieve without India transitioning to a net zero economy. And that transition will challenge your businesses and need to be managed strategically. It's really my hope that you leave here today with a clarity of thought on how to proceed and have the conviction needed to build strong ESG programs that will make corporate India shine as a beacon of ESG globally. The world is depending on us to get this right. Jai Hind.